This episode of the Houndsman XP Podcast is being released on Memorial Day 2021, and I hope you'll give me just a couple minutes here to editorialize a bit. Memorial Day is a day where we remember the veterans who made the ultimate sacrifice for our freedoms. They gave their lives for our freedoms. And I'm just asking that you take time on this Memorial Day to consider that, and also ask yourself, are you living the best life you can to honor that sacrifice? As a kid, I grew up in a family of World War II veterans, Korean War veterans, and Vietnam War veterans. They were at family functions and cookouts and weddings and Memorial Day services, and every one of them wants us to enjoy our freedoms. As an adult, I grew up around many warriors through my military service and my law enforcement career, and every one of them wants us to enjoy the cookout. They want us to enjoy the freedoms that we have. But we have to make sure that we are intentional and we find ways to protect those freedoms. I recently saw a social media post asking if there was any place where hunting with the use of hounds was a right. There are certainly states and places where hunting is a constitutionally protected right, the right to hunt. But the freedom for the ways that we hunt are not necessarily guaranteed. So the use of hounds is not a right, but a freedom that has been granted to us in accordance with the North American model for wildlife conservation and for sound management practices. Then we are allowed to use hounds to hunt. And that brings us to the difference between freedoms and rights. Rights are inalienable. They are something that are guaranteed to us. But freedoms are things that need to be protected. They need to be fought for. They need to have sacrifices made by those who believe in those freedoms in order to maintain them. So my challenge to you as houndsmen is that we memorialize the sacrifices that were made to guarantee our freedom, but we also look for opportunities to honor that sacrifice. Can you sacrifice a day of ideal hunting conditions to make an appearance at your state capitol to secure your freedoms for hunting with hounds? Can you sacrifice 10 minutes of your time to write a letter to a representative or contact your Fish and Wildlife Commission, your game managers, and make your voice heard? Considering the fact that those freedoms were secured by the blood of U.S. servicemen and women, it seems like a very small sacrifice. And you can look yourself in the mirror and say that I am living my best life. I am doing my part. I promise you that the warriors that gave up their life, the families who on this Memorial Day are remembering the death of a family member, want you to exercise your freedoms. So enjoy your cookout, enjoy your time with family, but don't take these freedoms for granted. If you are turning hounds loose today, take a couple minutes at the tailgate. Raise a glass in honor and remembrance of our servicemen and women who have paid the ultimate sacrifice. Take a few minutes to remember what that sacrifice was for that track will wait. Those hounds will still run it. But today, let's honor our men and women who have made the ultimate sacrifice in blood for our freedoms. Well, we are at the bear hunting Mecca. All things bear hunting are happening where we're at this weekend. And this is going to be cool because we got Mark Dufresne, previous podcast guest.
Yeah, thanks for having me back, Chris.
Yeah. What episode were you on? Do you remember?
I do not remember.
Yeah, so, and then we've got somebody else with us. And we roped him in at the last minute. We got Heath Hyatt from Virginia. Back on the podcast. You were on the podcast previously too.
It's been a while back, yeah.
Yeah.
Glad to come back.
Yeah, and we're just kind of talking about all kinds of stuff. But I thought the reason you got roped into this, Heath, is because Mark and I have been talking back and forth for I don't know how long, talking about genetics and scent work and how it affects scenting and different things. And the scent podcast that we did. We talk about it a lot on the podcast, but the one that we produced about scenting is, I probably get more questions about that. It's one of the hottest topics we've ever had. So I thought, who better to have on the podcast than a professional canine trainer?
Yeah, professional canine. I don't know about that, but
yeah,
I can give you my opinion. That's about all it's good.
That's
for.
about all it is, all the way around, isn't it?
Yeah, that's all we can do.
Yeah. What they say about theories? It's just an opinion with references.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Heath, how did you? We kind of got into this, but we were sharing down there. You were running hounds before you became a canine handler.
Yeah, I started running hounds. I know if you listen to one podcast, my great-granddad run hounds when I was little. I'm 8, 10 years old, and I hated them. They barked all the time. They were outside my room. I couldn't sleep at night. So anyway, in the mid-90s, 94, I actually got my first 2 dogs, which were plot hounds. One was a heavyweight bred Weems dog, and the other one was a bias bred dog. And I knew absolutely nothing about them. Started hunting. Basically, I turned them loose. They run everything in the sun. And it took me a long time. But anyway, I started.
Sounds like the ones I have now.
Well, it's not far.
We all have those days.
Yeah, it's not far from what we probably all have. But yeah, so that's how it started. When I got into law enforcement in 2003, my department was in the need of a hound because our narcotics issue was bad. And that's how I ended up getting picked to be a canine handler. So my focus wasn't really on the narcotics, like we talked. I like to track people.
Mm-hmm.
And tracking, like you said, is the hardest thing we do, and it's the most dangerous thing we do with our dogs. But that's what got me into canine work, and I've been doing it, 16 out of 18 years of my career so far.
You remember your first successful canine apprehension?
Yes, I do. And it took me quite a few years to get that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So tell us that story.
It was a guy had threatened suicide, and he basically took off. We chased him 2 or 3 times in the past, and kind of the attention thing. There was 2 dogs actually. Myself and one of the other officers from another agency were tracking him, and I had the patrol dog, so I would always follow him up because we knew he was armed with a knife.
Yeah.
And anyway, we come out onto a very populated trail there in our area, and when we got to that trail, we made a lose. So we were kind of just sitting there talking, like, okay, so what area do we need to start basically doing an area search to see if we can pick that track, the exit track back up?
And an area search is an off-leash.
Yes.
Canine patrol dog.
Right. And actually, yeah, we started working this field, a farmer's field off of this trail, and we basically cornered it into this area. We needed to work this area. This is probably the only place that he could have went. And we ended up picking, there was a gate in the middle of the field, and when we got to that gate, we had a contact, which means the dog leaned up, stuck his nose to the gate. Mm-hmm. And when we got up to the gate, there was bloody handprints on the gate.
Bloody handprints.
Bloody handprints,
yeah.
Yes. So we knew he was injured at this point in time. Dog back on the lead, front dog back on the track. We tracked down through the field, crossed a very tight woven wire fence. We had to throw the dogs over, and the front dog actually started up through a little pine grove. And when he got up through it, he throwed a proximity alert, which means he's in human odor. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, he froze up, and guy was 25 yards in the woods, stabbing himself in the neck. We had less than lethal with us, so we took a beanbag shotgun, was able to put a couple rounds on him to get him to stop. The guys were able to get in, get the knife away from him, and we actually flew the helicopter into the field right there and saved his life, and the kid's still alive today. So
yeah,
that was about a 2-mile track in end of May, so humidity's up. You know, you got pollen and stuff. You got a lot of things that go into factor when you start tracking in that time of year.
Yeah,
it was in the evening too. It was 3 o'clock in the evening.
Thermals are moving down.
Yep. So
starting to think about it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's morning tracking, evening tracking is a little different, isn't
it? Yeah. My first apprehension was a guy that had snuck into Jefferson Proving Ground, which was a military base type thing that had been converted over to a wildlife refuge, but it still had the big fence around it. And it was a common problem for people to sneak in there and hunt, dig ginseng, you know, all kinds of stuff. And one of the officers, well, 2 of our officers were working in that area, and they found the vehicle and called me. And I got lucky. Just happened to be working that day, and I was just finished up my canine training with my certifications and different stuff. And by the time I got there was a deputy there and different things. But in this wildlife refuge, it was fenced in. There's really no way to set up an effective perimeter to contain somebody. So I didn't know what I was anymore. I didn't know what I was doing, yeah. You know. So I get the dog out, harness her up, find the track, the human track going through the hole in the fence, and had an officer with me. We tracked down across a road into a wooded area. Then we hit this big long ravine. And we're tracking up through there, tracking. She's showing good track profile. It was kind of rainy that day, high humidity. And we're tracking along, and she's just buried in the harness. I mean, just she's plowing. And we're moving along pretty good. And of course, when you're the handler, you get tunnel vision on your dog, watching your dog, and that's why we take another officer with us. And all of a sudden, he's like, there he is. And we look up, and the guy's standing there looking at us in disbelief, like, I can't believe you found me.
What are you doing here?
Yeah. And so he was in there digging ginseng illegally. He had a handgun on him. I mean, it wasn't anything dramatic like yours, but the funniest thing was when we got back to the road, the deputy and the other conservation officer that were standing there, like, they were in disbelief. They'd been through that deal 100 times, you know, where you call a canine and you stand around and you wait, and the canine handler comes out and says, oh, we couldn't find him.
Yeah.
And
he got in the car and left.
Yeah.
I tracked to the road. He got in the car and left.
Yeah. But I just thought it'd be good for us to kind of get together. And Mark, you and I kind of had a little bit of a different conversation that we had been hashing around for a few weeks, and lay that out.
Yeah, well, my interest lies in trailing ability with the hounds for hunting. I don't really know all the fancy terminology, but I pay attention to anything that anybody uses a working dog to trail with. You can learn a lot of things. There's a lot of parallels. So Chris and I, we were just sort of talking about the parallels, and in my mind, the drug dogs or the human tracking dogs, I figured there had to be a lot of studies. There's a lot of money involved there in these dogs, big investment, and I just was more curious about breeding programs for these dogs, how they identify. Is there any genetic studies? Where my interest lies in breeding a lot, so I want to know, can I replicate? Are there genetic markers through DNA profiling? There's so many different things available today that we can use to maybe shorten up the learning curve, and that's all. So we've been talking about that stuff.
Yeah, and probably the art of scenting by our hounds is one of the most misunderstood aspects of hunting. We don't know how it happens, and of course we all want to find that silver bullet where every pup we raise has a phenomenal nose and brains to match it and everything to go into it. And so that's why we rope Heath in, because you've been are you a master trainer now?
Yeah.
And what has that entailed as far as?
So a lot of hours of training.
Right.
But basically we have two different categories, and you can get certified as a trainer. And a trainer allows you to run schools for new handlers and new dogs as teams. To be a master trainer, you go through the extra stuff, and actually the state allows me to certify dogs as a team through an accredited agency. Either they meet the standard to be put into work, or they do not meet the standard, they need to go back for more training, or they need to be washing the program.
Mm-hmm.
So, I have the ability to certify dogs through the state of Virginia. I enjoy the training. I think most people with dogs is, being able to see that dog progress. That's the funnest thing for me. I like to take a dog that don't know anything and then catch a person with him, or, you find narcotics or you get an apprehension. But, so the state allows me to certify dogs in that discipline. So, yeah. And
for me, the biggest reward in running hounds is when you get that dog that you want to breed and you do your research and you find a mate for that dog and you find the traits that you need, and then you breed it, and then you got those puppies, and then you start with those puppies. And to see them, some of them aren't successful, some of them are, but to see them learn and to grow is that's the most rewarding part of it all.
Well, Heath, you've bred your own line of hounds and different things for years too. So,
yeah, and I want to hit on what Mark said about the breeding aspect of it. So I want to go into the police world. I've got a lot of contacts in Europe. In fact, we import a lot of most of our dogs, and I won't go into why. But so we import a lot of our dogs. They do not believe what we believe. They don't breed uncles and nieces and cousins. I mean, they take a dog that has no lineage with this dog. Okay, so Chris's dog, you have these abilities and these traits, and I'm going to take this dog from Mark that matches those, or if this dog has a weakness, I'm going to pick this dog that has that strength, and then I'm going to breed them together.
Breeding best to best is
right.
What they're...
They do not, the line breeding as we call it, they are not opponent of that.
Have you had discussions with them about it and asked them why?
Yes, I have had lengthy discussions with them over it. They're very strict in their breeding process. The dogs that some of us keep around, they would not. And to their credit, that if we have a litter of 10 puppies, we know that probably 5 of those puppies are going to be okay, and then 5 of them, you have 1-2 mediocres and a couple washes. Most of the time when they breed, from what I've seen, in fact, the dog that I'm running right now is a Dutch Shepherd. They have made that cross twice. And
what are the percentages that are working in that litter?
8 out of 10.
And these are from total, basically, outcrosses, no...
Correct. No kin whatsoever. So they're on to something.
Yeah.
And I'm conflicted because I know what I see, what we do. You know, I've been breeding the same line of dogs since '96. I'm into my 5th and 6th generation of what I hunt. I am seeing some of those traits starting to getting weaker.
Mm-hmm. This is something that is really. So I listened to a podcast, the W podcast. Bear Saragusa talked to Johan Plant. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but he really got me thinking. He talked about the need for the outcrosses and exactly what these guys are doing over there, and it's really changed my outlook on a few things. And you know, as we line breed and we go further down in the generations, you know, a lot of us, these big game lines have been bred so tight for so long that even though we may be making outcross, the common lineage is just back there a few dogs back because they haven't been here that long. So, you know, you see the reproductive discrepancies, you know, heat cycles, females that aren't good mothers, you know, hard to breed, hardiness in dog size, obviously diminishing. There's a lot of things there that can go on that interest me as a breeder, and I still believe in line breeding. But I'm starting to believe more in the need for that outcross occasionally, because as we cull for traits, I believe traits are tied together, and as we cull those traits, sometimes we lose the traits we don't want to lose, and then all of a sudden a generation or two later, we're like, where did that nose go? We lost it. And how do we get it back? And it's hard to get back. So, yeah, there's just a lot of really neat things, and that's really interesting on the European scene, how they approach that. And I'm amazed at that percentage of 8 out of 10. That's
the
incredible.
only thing that keeps my wheels turning. Like, how, if they're making an outcross, complete outcross, and they're getting better percentages than I'm getting line breeding my own dogs that I've bred for 20 years.
You got to pay attention.
They're doing something right.
Right.
Yeah. So when they are breeding outcrosses every time, how do they maintain their breed of dogs or their line of dogs?
What would the outcrosses be? Are they totally outcrosses different breeds of dogs, or within the Dutch Shepherds, just two unrelated lines? How far are they going out?
So the conversations that I've had with them, and I'll give you an example. We got a giant schnauzer, and the mom come from Czech, the dad come from Russia, completely two non-kin. Same breed, just non-kin. They were looking for specific traits when they bred this, and they got the majority of what they wanted. So when you talk about the Dutch Shepherd or the Mallee or German Shepherds, most of the time, and I'm gonna say most, a high percentage of time, they're making crosses that are not kin. Like. They're the same breed. Now, anybody that knows about police work, you can cross any type of the 5 Mallees, and you can get a Dutch Shepherd. You can breed a Mallee to a Dutchie and end up with a Dutch, or you can cross this and that. What we are seeing a lot of is they're breeding a Mallee and a Shepherd, and we're getting a lot of bigger dogs. And if anybody runs Shepherds, they would know this. You're getting the Shepherd temperament with the Mallee drive. So we're seeing a lot of different. They're mixing those more so now. We're seeing a lot of those. So
the whole breeding process they are breeding for a utilitarian dog. They're not worried about color. They're not worried about. They want certain aspects, and then how do they ensure that they have a high success rate with their dogs? I think that might be a key.
The testing process. So, yeah, Dick Stoll, is anybody can go online and look him up. He starts testing these dogs at 10 weeks old. You know, and if we raise puppies, you know, we do certain things with them, and we're looking for, you know, this, and this, and you know, he starts testing those dogs at 10 weeks old, and they know, like, the testing process that they use. I don't feel confident enough in it that I would do it myself, because I haven't seen enough of 10-week-old puppies that take the test that they do.
Right.
But they can tell you at 12 weeks old, we're going to use this one
which
for nose.
Ones are going to make it.
And it's all nose work. You know, we're looking at nose work. Same thing that we are, as houndsmen, we want is a dog to be able to track, trail, and tree. Now, the apprehension part of it is a little bit of a different test. So you're going into bite work. You're looking at the grip, which goes back to genetics. Does he got a deep grip, a shallow grip? You know, there's a whole different set of things you're looking for there. But as far as tracking and narcotics work, you're looking for the nose work. And the Europeans believe this, and I may have heard you say this on a podcast, Mark, that they want a dog that's got a calm mind.
Yes.
Like a dog that is out of his mind, and they don't like them.
Yep.
They don't want them. And if they end up breeding those, that is an automatic cull, because the dog can't think in a red state.
In my personal selection process, I'm at the point, the prey drive part of it, to use your term, I never called it prey drive, but it explains it. You know, where is there the amount of prey drive you want, but still the brains to turn it on and turn it off? Because a dog has to be able to, in my opinion, especially guiding, you have to have a dog good around people, kids. You're in parking lots, at grocery stores. You don't know where you're going to end up. Hikers, dogs encounter your dogs are with hikers sometimes up on the AT, and you can't have an ill dog in any way, shape, or form. Never mind towards dog, but towards people. So I'm trying to select personally for the dogs that I enjoy more in the yard, and they're the level-headed ones. Now, when they see their animal, their prey, they can turn that on, and it's 100% go. But yet in the yard, you know, I'm trying to look for those dogs they're just more enjoyable. I find they trail more, they work through situations more, and I really see it in cat hunting. You know, bear, a bigger animal with more scent. I like to cat hunt, and I really see it in the cat hunting with situations like partially frozen rivers. And a cat will run the edge of that ice, you know, just making time on the dog as the dog's falling in the river, getting washed under ice. I mean, there's all sorts of things. So a really smart dog will drift that. They'll get on the downwind side and they'll drift that track, and they'll never go into the ice. They'll run the edge of the river, and when the cat swings out, they cross the river, and then they spin the cat down, and he'll usually go back to the river in those situations. So the smart dogs know how to keep time, and I've had, for instance, 2 dogs in that situation, my old Bryn dog, and then a dog that was related to her but younger, would have been a niece. And Bryn was, by the end of this, a mile ahead of this other dog. The other dog stayed on the track. Bryn just ran down the side of that river, winding that cat. And I saw the cat. I could have killed it, but I let it just cross the road and caught the dogs, and I had a good day. But it really opened my eyes to the intelligence part of that. And in realizing how to work through tough situations, or a cat will spin down, and when the conditions, the snow is mealy, the scent isn't good, that cat will run its back track, figure eights. It's been on its own track several times, and some dogs just get bogged down on that. The really good dogs cut the circle.
That's right.
Yeah.
And they don't say a word. They come off the track and they spin a circle. And when you watch her, with GPSs, it's awesome. When you watch that dog, just all of a sudden you hear boop and off. And you know that's the cat right there. And that's an intelligence thing to do that. So I look for stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think you said something about prey drive, good around the yard, good around people. And prey drive and temperament of the dog are two different things. You know, a prey drive type dog, one with high prey, you've got to be the alpha dog in that pack and teach them when to turn it on, when to turn it off. But
we call it capping.
Okay.
Capping that drive.
Yep.
Is what we yeah. So that dog's got to know, all right, it's time to go. And I always think about the old timers. Like I'm an envious. They used to be able, that dog lay on the porch until they was ready to go hunting. And when they go hunting, they caught game.
Yep. So Bryn, for instance, never turned her into a house dog. Is she 5, 6? Well, whenever I went to bear camp, she was just such a fun dog. The customers loved her. And she'd crawl right up in their sleeping bags with them. Never house trained her, never house broke her. That dog would not leave camp. There could be bait barrels at camp. There could be bears coming into the bait barrels. She wouldn't walk out of the dooryard. She wouldn't bother the chickens in the yard, but you hit the woods and that dog was gone, instant.
Mm-hmm.
And she just knew. She knew. I didn't teach that, but I paid attention to it, and I learned from her. She taught me more than I ever taught her. And so now I look for that in dogs. And, you know, my process with puppies, so say when they're, you know, 6, 8 weeks old and you're starting to feed them, getting them on hard food and stuff. And, you know, I feed one big pan in the middle of the pen and I just sit there and I watch. And you'll see there'll be a bully in the bunch, you know, and he'll start shouldering in there and he's trying to shove them out. And if you let that go, those dogs, you know, these are very gritty dogs. And I found if you get on them young like that, you don't have issues. You know, you just got to be a little rough with them, lay them over, teach them what's right, what's wrong. And if you do that for 2 or 3 weeks, then all of a sudden they come into their role. They know their role. I feel like canines, you know, they're looking for somebody to show them what's right and what's wrong. And so that's my job, you know, as the dog handler. This is where you turn it on. This is, you know, on a bear, this is where you want to be aggressive. In the yard, you want to shut it off and you want to lay on your house and chill out. So
as a master trainer, Heath, we're kind of scattering out here a little bit, but you brought up a good point, Mark. You know, around the feed pan when they're that age, you know, what sort of things do you do in police training? Because you're talking about high energy, high prey drive dogs that can hurt you and hurt other people. And so the handler has got to be in charge. So how do you train your handlers to establish that dominant role over their patrol dog?
Again, I know this is a catch-all. Every dog's different. Every handler's different. If we're working in narcotics dogs, we're looking for that medium dog. I don't need the dog that's over the top, like we're used to 10, 15 years ago. If that dog didn't run through a brick wall, we didn't want it. Those dogs are hard to train.
Yep. Same with the hounds, for sure.
So
if you got one that's trying to chew its way out of the box
eating
on every
its
strike,
doghouse. I mean, I've seen dogs that you walk up and there's half a doghouse there. The tin roof is eaten off. Now they'll fight a bear to the death, but is that dog one you really want to mess with?
Well, what we found out through training and going to seminars and stuff like that is those dogs are the ones that are easily frustrated, and they don't really have they can't think through a process.
Right.
They like brains.
So if I'm looking for a narcotics dog, I want something that's kind of even keel, like you're talking about. When I go to work, I want you to use your nose and go to work. Patrol dog is a little different. You know, I've got to have a dog, and we've domesticated these dogs, and now I'm saying, okay, go bite a person and hold that person. Those dogs you're looking for different things. But so to go back to your original question, how do I teach my guys to be able to? And I don't necessarily. We're not going to dominate the dog. If you was in canine, alpha roll. We don't hardly ever do that anymore. There's other training mechanisms and other ways that we can use. But if I've got a dog that we're having issues with, we go back to food. And I know that when I was on the podcast before, like we hand feed our dogs. They're working for food. And they learn that Dad is feeding me, so Dad's got a little bit higher status in his pack order than what I do.
Right.
So depending on the problem, depending on the issue, and depending on how bad it is, if I can control it with food, I do that. And I usually have my new guys, and I don't care if it's a narcotics dog, tracking dog, patrol dog, the quickest way to build a bond with a dog is through food. And it's like the first couple months, my dogs are all fed. The dog that I'm working now, I got him when he was 11 months old, imported from Holland. The first 2 months of his life, he eat out of my hand every day.
Mm-hmm.
And we established that bond.
That goes back to a primeval genetic thing in them, because when they get their food from the mother, the father, so you're tapping back into that hereditary thing within that dog. If you take a easy one to look at is like a pack of coyotes. Those pups don't leave the den for 10, 12 weeks. Mom and dad are bringing food to them, and there's still some genetic markers there. Same way with the dog, wouldn't you say, Heath?
Yeah. And if we've got a dog that is a little bit more higher strung, or we need, we'll use different. I mean, we may use lead corrections, or we may use something else. A lot of times, if you'll just take something away from them, dog needs food, water, and air to survive. You start taking some of those things away from them, you can get them in line pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean that in a negative way either. Like, there's positive punishment. If the 4 quadrants of operant conditioning, I mean, we can use different things. I can levy with that dog. So if I've got one that's out of control, we'll put him up. We'll start using food. If that's not working, then we'll just go through a list of like a use of force continuum. We'll just kind of go through it. Okay, this is what works for him. We'll pull it out and start working it. So, but most of our dogs now, I mean, like I said, the dogs that we had, 10, 15 years ago, especially patrol dogs, nobody got in close to them.
Nope.
If you got within the lead range, you were getting hit. Those are not the dogs we're using anymore. We're using dogs that are social. We're using dogs that I can take my dog in a school right now and have him around kids. Now, if they get to pulling on his ears and tail and stuff, probably going to have a little bit of a problem. But I can take him in there and he's fine. So the type of dog, the style of dog that we're used to, times have changed, and we're not using that. We're not using those red dogs.
Yeah, when first started in law enforcement, I started in 1990. And a canine handler, if you went past the car, I mean, that dog was hitting the bars on the windows in the back. Mm-hmm. And some of that's trained into them, to be protective of the patrol vehicle and stuff like that. But
we've probably all walked by a dog box and
man,
had the same thing. I mean, they come out of there ready to eat your shoulder off.
Yeah, but I've been out before I was a handler and just patrol officer. When the call comes out, dog's loose, you're looking for cover because he's not uniform friendly.
Yeah.
And you're going to find some place to get. I climbed a tree one time. I was actually running a track on a guy that took off on us. And I was going through the valley, and a patrol dog was out there too, and he was supposed to be, the dog got loose. Mm. And here we are. I climbed a tree. My dog Shadow's down on the ground. I'm thinking she can fend for herself and get away if she needs to. But, yeah, when Chester got loose, you got in a tree. And that's...
Yeah, and I mean, that's the dogs that I was trained and brought up with. I mean... But now, and you talked about they're not uniform friendly. That was a training issue.
Yes.
You don't ever do bite work in a uniform because you're just telling that dog that blue looks good.
Yeah.
Our TAC guy, something that we learned with our TAC
Blue's
guys.
on the menu.
They wear big bulky kits. When they've got a full kit on, I mean, they look like the Michelin Man. What's our bite suit look like? The Michelin Man.
Yeah.
We don't do that anymore. Like my dogs are out with our TAC guys. They're running free. They're clearing buildings with them. This is part of your pack. You work with this pack. So that was a whole training issue that as time has went on, we've
gotten smarter.
Yes.
Yeah, we've gotten smarter. So let's tie it over to some of the things that we can do with hounds in that aspect. Have you used any of the training techniques, your selection techniques in your hounds, Heath?
Yeah, and I'm still failing at it. I mean,
me too.
We had this conversation on the way down here. Like, you got 10 pups, and I don't know whether you just grab in there and pick one out or you start watching them. If everybody's lucky enough to keep those pups that are 10, 12, 15 weeks old, it's a little easier to pick. One of the things that I really look for and we do this with our police dogs too, is we'll set up little like little things for the dogs to do. You know, I know everybody hides the food and everybody does this. We'll set up little things for them to do. I don't care if the dog fails. I want to see if he recovers and how fast he recovers. If I've got a dog that just shuts down after he can't do it, that's pretty much, he does that 1 or 2 times. That's something I'm going to probably eliminate. Does that make sense what I'm saying about the recovery part? Loud noises.
Right, loud noises.
Yes.
And I purposely do not try to hide my puppies and keep them mowing the lawns. My kids are shooting squirrels in the trees. Yep. You know, the chickens, you know, we got roosters out there fighting around them. I mean, any stimulus like that, I want to see how the dog reacts. Mm-hmm. And just like you, if I've got one that goes and hides in the corner and can't handle it, I've lost interest in that right away. I don't care if it's 8 weeks old. I've probably lost interest, and I'm going to move on to the ones. I want the one who
wants to sit there, sits there and looks at him and watches it. And it's like, look at that.
He's not scared, but he's intrigued by it.
Yeah.
And he wants to explore, and he looks at it. Those are the dogs that kind of, me personally, that's what I like to watch with a litter of pups.
When you talk about setting your hound pups up.
So one of the things that we do for our police dogs, and I really like this exercise, and I like it for so get a baby pool. Fill it full of empty bottles, 2-liter bottles, you know, water bottles. Just fill it full. Put some dog food in there, and watch those dogs go in and go for it. That will show you. A lot of dogs will jump in it, and when them bottles start moving, it's like, oh crap, what is this?
Them crinkly water bottles.
And then you'll have some that'll just dive right in there and don't care. And I watch for those dogs too, because we're talking about the dogs that get really high.
Right.
You know, like you said, they'll just go in and do whatever and don't care. I like the middle kill dog, the kind that goes in, oh, wait a second, checks it out, and then goes about his business. If I've got them that jump out and don't want nothing to do with it, I'm kind of like Mark. That's kind of a no-no. Lawnmower, I mean, I have my kids beating pots and pans when they're feeding.
Yeah.
You know, anything noise-related, there's a list of things you can do, all kinds of things. I've even set up
you got to be creative.
A box fan and put the streamers on it.
Yeah.
In front of the dog food to see if, wind hitting their face. There's all kinds of little things you can do. So
I do, I'm up in Maine, so, when I'm out cat hunting, we find shed moose antlers all the time. Mm-hmm. So I'll put moose antlers all in where I keep the puppies, and I put them points up, and they rock and they roll. Well, you'll watch, there'll be a pup there that's, he's like king of the mountain. He'll climb up on that thing, and it doesn't matter if it's rolling around. He's rolling the puppies off of there, keeping his balance, and then you'll see one step on an antler, and it rolls him over, and he goes and hides in the corner because he doesn't know how to react to it. So all sorts of things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's what are you looking for as a hunter? Like, what area? You hunt a different area than I hunt. Most of our timber is either open or laurel thickets. You've got the pine thickets you can't walk through.
Right.
So what I test my puppies about going in tight places, and that's something we test our police dogs for too. I've got a lot of dogs that won't go up in a corner and search a corner, because when you start shutting that space down on them, they'll back up. So they're not using their nose because they're too worried about the environment. Mm-hmm. So depending on what we want, what we're using our dogs for. One of the things I do, and it's so simple, and I'm sure everybody listening to this podcast does it, is I start dropping food in the yard, like little tracks. We've probably dropped hot dogs and stuff, tracking dogs. I start dropping food at a younger age to see which one of those dogs, narcotics-wise, we wanted to test the dog's hunt drive. So a little bit different than the prey. Prey's moving. Hunt is how long will he look and stay with that. I typically, for testing a narcotics dog, and it's the old toy test, we take a toy, we throw it out in the grass, dog goes after it, gets it, bring the toy back, we spin the dog around, throw the toy again. I want that dog to stay looking for it for 2 minutes. That's my shut-off, okay? Mm-hmm. I don't care if he finds it or not. I just want him to look for 2 minutes, because it takes me about a minute and a half to search a car. It takes me about 2 minutes to look for a dope in a room. So we've set that process up to test that time limit. So I know if that dog will stay after it for 2 minutes, I can do my job with him. So when I throw the food out, sometimes I'll just take a handful of food and just scatter it out, and I'll watch the dog after it's all gone. I'll watch for the dog that stays the longest, because then, Mark, I'm getting my trail dog.
Right.
Not all the time.
It's
but
exactly,
a good start.
Yep, it's exactly the same process. So I've got kids. I had 2 boys. They wanted rabbits. We got a little farm going. We got all sorts of critters. Well, they didn't take care of their rabbits. So dear old dad let their rabbits go. Teach them a lesson. Well, then the rabbits started populating. And there was, it got to the height where I would take them to neighbors' houses and drop them off, and I'd populate their yards. But then I found out, I started watching litters of puppies that I had, and it was the greatest thing in the world, because they'd come out in the evening and they'd feed. So I'd just go over and I'd have 6 or 8 pups in the kennel. I'd just kick the door open and I'd watch. And of course the rabbit hops and they sniff it, and then it hops and they sniff it. Well, I'm telling you, in probably 2 hours, you can have an 8-week-old puppy opening and chasing, and then, of course, with these rabbits, they'd go into brush piles. Well, then I said, well, this is interesting, because I know they can't see them in these brush piles or in holes. So there was one litter of pups that I had, and I had a dog stay for 8 hours. And I had, at 9 o'clock at night, my wife said, would you get that gosh darn dog out of that brush pile? It stayed at it, just digging and chewing, trying to get in there. And it was interesting to me, because every dog there was different. They all fell off at a different rate. Some made it 20 minutes. There was 2 of them that made it for probably 3 or 4 hours. And then there was that one that went, and so I started watching things like that to see who will stay with scent the longest. And I love the trail. For me personally, a big part of the hunt is getting the bear on its feet or the cat on its feet. Now, you got a lot of other traits that are important once it's on its feet, but if you can't get it on its feet, you got nothing. So trailing has always fascinated me, and I had some old-time cat hunters teach me how they cat hunted and how they started dogs. And I believe this, you kind of touched on it, Heath, it's a big part of building a relationship with your dog. These cat hunters hunt one dog at a time, and you go out there and you trail with that dog. Not on a leash, but you're just working with them. They lose the track, you find the track, you call them over, they trust you. And I believe for Bryn, that was the fun part for me, is we had I didn't even have to talk to that dog. She knew what I wanted after the first year, and the dog trusts you. You help that dog, you work together, and you build that relationship, and they push a little harder. They know you want that track because you're right there with them. So when they would have given up and come out, you're still in the woods. Come here, hissing them up, talking them up, and then they push a little harder. Well, pretty quick, you got a dog that'll trail 15 miles, cold trailing, on a 10 or 12-hour-old track, and that's the kind of stuff I like to see out of them.
I want to take it back. You said something earlier there, that pup that stayed 8 hours in that brush pile. One, I want to get Heath's opinion of that, but I want to know how that pup turned out.
So how
did that transfer over to hunting?
She was absolute natural. Loved the dog to death, but what got her in trouble was on the first nasty bear. It was about 130 pounds. So she was running and treeing, and she was what you dream about. I started hunting her, I think she was around 10 months old, and just right start to finish, nice job, opening on track, cold trailing with some of the old dogs a little bit because of the rabbit work. Well, she had a very high, I guess you'd call it the prey drive, and she went in there on the first bear, and it tore her up, and she would never stick with a bear after that, and I ended up having to get rid of her. But yeah, it's a balancing object. Some of those dogs that fell off in the middle, those dogs went on to be really solid dogs, and they weren't as gritty, but they were gritty enough. So the one that was, over the top there, she didn't make it. And it was just sometimes it's a matter of luck on which animal, which bear do you get that dog on.
Yeah.
And if they make it through that first year and they don't get torn up, you're good to go. But boy, 1 or 2 bears in and they hit that bear, and it's just bad luck sometimes.
Yeah. So, Heath, you've got the same litter of pups that Mark has at your house, okay? And you see see this type of behavior in pup. What are your thoughts on that?
Man, it's hard to let that one go. I mean, that one, he just said it natural. We don't teach that dog anything. We just put it in the woods. And, I had this conversation with one of my friends at home a couple months ago. We was talking about training dogs. We're not dog trainers. You take those natural dogs, you turn them loose, you show them what they're supposed to run, you correct them from what they're not supposed to be doing. There's no training to it. They do it. Now, you want to talk about training dogs, you take the mediocre dogs that you've got to persuade a little bit and help along the way. That's where it shows your training ability. We all want natural dogs because they're easy.
Right.
Just turn them loose. But
they make you look good.
Yeah, I mean, you want to pick her out because – she's showing you so much at that young age. And I want to talk about maturity level. She's showing you so much at that age, you're like, I've got something here.
Yeah.
I know it. But for me, if I was looking at that litter, I would probably pick me one or two more that was in the middle. And I usually hardly ever take one pup. I usually keep a couple.
Yep. I try to do the same.
Like
2 to 3 just until a certain age.
Yep.
And then you can narrow it down again. But you got to have 2 or 3 to start with.
So, let's talk about maturity level. And I may have hit on this the last time. If I did, I'm sorry. But let's take our apprehension dogs because we're doing the same thing. You're taking a year-old dog and putting him in a bear race. Sooner or later, they're going to catch one.
Yeah.
And like you said, if they can get through the first year, but you're asking a juvenile, and this is how I tell my police guys, I'm taking Europeans do not let their dogs go into police work until 3 years old. I mean,
right.
we've hit that. 3 years old. Okay, I'm taking a 1.5-year-old dog that is a juvenile. We're looking at a 14-year-old kid, and I'm putting him in the ring with Mike Tyson. You put her in the ring with Mike Tyson. I send my dog in to clear a building, and Joe Dirt's in there, and he's got to bring him out. And if Joe Dirt don't want to come out, he's going to fight my dog. So I'm putting my 1.5-year-old dog in there with Mike Tyson. Now, a slim number of those dogs can take a butt kicking and going to come on out of there.
But there's a greater percentage that
so most of those are going to take a butt kicking and say, I don't want no part of this. And it's not that they're bad dogs or going to be bad dogs. It's because their maturity level at that age, they cannot handle that pressure at that age. Now, you put that dog in there at 3 years old, it's ball game on.
This is a comment by an old bear hunter that stuck with me for years, and it was Joe Hudson that told me this, and this made me really think about it and kind of put it into perspective for me. So I can't remember what age he was, but he was pretty young in school, and back in the day the teachers took the ruler to your knuckles if you mouthed off, and he mouthed off, and he got just wrapped right over the knuckles till his hands were bloody. He said to this day, and Joe's in his 70s now, he says, I can still just about feel that. He says, by the time I was 18, I was in a fist fight every day, and he says, I can't remember one of those things or what I fought about. But he was mature enough then to handle it differently, and that really caused me to think a lot about these young dogs and what you put them into.
Yeah, and we get a lot of – I hope I didn't cut anybody off. I mean, we get a lot – a lot of my guys – and I'm guilty. We all like to see that 6-month-old dog running and treeing.
You betcha.
We love it. But I also know now, through my police experience, I've learned so much. I've learned to be patient. That's one of the things I picked up from what I've done with my police dogs is I like that dog doing this at 6 months old. But I also know that if I turn this dog loose at 9 months old, which I had a Cameron male that I did the same thing, nice dog. 9 months old, went in, got the crap beat out of him. It took me almost another year to get him back where he was at before that. He went on and made a nice dog, and was one of my nicer dogs. But I really set that dog back, getting him beat up. So if you've got patience, you're probably going to come out ahead of things. If you don't, then you're going to go through a lot more dogs because you're going to put that dog in a situation it can't handle once it happens.
Right. It's too late.
Yeah.
And patience is a big part of it. Sort of one of my mentors, Roy Clark, he's probably the greatest gift he gave me was to teach me patience with a dog. And that man, there was a cross I made with one of Roy's dogs, and So I had a young dog that I had 2 young males out of it. He had a male and a female. It was only 4 of them. Well, this female got on the wrong bear pretty early, got hurt. Got on another bear, got hurt. It set her back. It's taken him about 2 years. Now I just asked him today. I says, "Now how's Beauty doing?" And he says, "Boy, I got her right now."
But why did he stay with her?
Because he liked her. You know, he just
something
about her. And that's his knowledge, his years. There was something there he liked. And I'll tell you,
there were other things that dog was doing.
What he would always tell me is, he said, when she smells bear, he said she's out of her mind. He said she'll come out of that dog box sideways, upside down. And he just liked, even as a young puppy, she was so turned on by bear scent. And maybe I'm wrong, but maybe that was part of it. But he definitely had some things there that he saw, and he stuck with her, and she's a very nice dog.
The determination to catch is what he saw.
Yeah.
That's what you see. When you see that kind of behavior,
Yep.
Nothing's going to stop that dog from getting to where it needs to be. And I guess that's what Roy's is seeing.
And that's exactly, with my dogs, that's what I bred into Roy's for, was the particular male that I picked. What he threw, he was an old dog, 12 years old when I first bred into him. Harry Joe was his name, and he was known for he wasn't the prettiest dog. He was kind of gaumy looking, big, thick. But he said, "Buddy," he says, "that dog will put it in them." And he says they'll go through hell and back to get there. And the offspring are like that. And that is what I like. To me, it's more of I call it the old school plot. A lot of us have bred, vet bills are expensive. A lot of people are coon hunting, different. They don't need the grit. Well, I still, Roy always calls it nerve, and I like the nerve, but he'll be the first one to tell you. He says, you got to have intelligence with it. He says, you got to have a bear back them up a few times, and if they don't learn, he says, they ain't going to make it. He says, the ones that learn, and they learn how to do it, he says, those are the ones you want. They're just going to work a bear. They're going to get their bites when they can, but they're going to be smart about it. And he's patient. Some of these dogs that I've had out of Roy's dogs, I would call them, they have moments of greatness when they're young. You see a hunt, you're like, oh, man, that's great. And then maybe they're out of pocket 2 or 3 times. But what he's taught me is if you've seen something that you like, and it's different for everybody, but for me personally, I've seen something that reminds me of so-and-so, or I like that, and I've stuck with them. And I'll tell you what, by the time 3 to 4 years old, you're like, holy cow, you got a dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Heath, do you think we're putting our hounds in losing situations at too young of an age, or what's your opinion on that? Because we've all heard we've read it on the internet. Some guy will, he'll get on Facebook and he'll say, what age should I start my puppy on bear? And you'll get everything from 2 years old to, if they ain't doing it by 9 months, I'm not feeding them for another 2, I
think it's personal preference. For me, I do a lot of groundwork with my dogs up to a year old. A lot of groundwork. I'm feeding them in the truck. I'm loading them. I'm leading them. I'm taking them on walks.
There's a lot of stuff they can learn and never go on a bear hunt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Starting a dog starts the day they hit the ground.
Yep.
Really.
Yeah.
But for our conversation,
I would say more so than not, we put dogs that are not prepared for that or not mature enough. We do. And I would say that half the time we're lucky and the other half we're not.
I've ruined a lot of beautiful young dogs, and I typically wait until they're about a year old to start. I try to time all my litters. I won't breed a female where they come in 6-7 months old right at May or June or whenever you're starting to bear hunt, because you can't leave that dog at home. Sooner or later you're going to put it in the truck too soon.
Mm-hmm.
So I purposely try to breed my dogs so they're a year, maybe they're 14 months, 15 months when I come into bear season, and then I know I've got at least a better percentage chance of not ruining them. But within those dogs, the individual dogs, there's some I won't even touch that I just call it they just got too much puppy in them. And those are the dogs that mentally they can't, but then you'll pick one out that's all business. You take it out there and it doesn't want to play. Somebody comes over to play with it and it shoves them off and it wants to get back to the scent. It wants to smell something, and those are the ones I just judge them, and this is the one I'll start first. And once I get them going good, then I might pick old so-and-so and start that one. But every dog is, in my experience and opinion, is different on when they're ready to start.
It is, yeah. I mean, like I said, my Dutchie that I'm running now, I mean, at a year old, he'd fight Mike Tyson. He would,
Yeah.
and he could take that whipping. But I don't want to put him there. I mean, I know, and now he's 3, and he'll still do what he needs to do. But I think it's
Now he could take Mike Tyson.
well, maybe I don't know. But he'd definitely,
When he was younger.
he'd give him a shot. But you're right, and it's just knowing your dogs. It's knowing your breed, knowing it helps if you know the background of those dogs. And I mean, I think everybody in here knows their background of their dogs. And if you could take one thing is slow down a little bit, spend a little more time with them.
Patience.
That's
time.
right. Like I said, what are you gaining? And I would ask myself this: what am I gaining taking that 9-month-old puppy to the woods and getting him beat up by accident, other than my ego? Because that's all it is. I've got a 9-month-old dog. Watch it. Okay.
This one will fight a bear at 6 months old.
Yeah.
But I want that dog at 6 years old that is a bear dog.
Yeah.
And I think you have to look at the long term instead of the short term. And I think we get short term.
Well,
a lot.
it's society in general, in my opinion, has moved towards intolerance of patience. Everything's got to be quick now. And sometimes we have to sort of step back and say, think just like what you said. Think about it for a minute. What am I really gaining by 3 months or 4 months? I'm really not gaining anything.
The dog's just not that pup is not mentally prepared. He thinks he is. He's like when we were 10 years old and we thought it was a good idea to jump off the roof of the house.
That's right.
Yeah. That'll be fun.
Yeah.
Watch this. And we're putting these puppies in situations that they're not mentally prepared to handle yet, and we end up setting them back. And I think that is part of why we see lower success rates in the litters of these pups that are hitting the ground in our hounds. The genetics are there, but we make training errors, just like we talked about before. The uniform friendly dog. We found out that was a training issue. That wasn't a genetic issue. That was a training issue.
And we're all going to make those mistakes as houndsmen, but the really good houndsmen, the guys that are in it for their lifetime, they learn from those mistakes.
Yes.
The other guys never even figure out that they made a mistake. They just keep doing it over and over. But the really good guys pay attention and they modify their methods and they seem to fix the problem.
And that's where I was kind of going with that. Was I was having the conversation with somebody here yesterday about the difference between a houndsman and somebody with dogs. A houndsman is the person. You mentioned Roy Clark. Roy's been breeding his line of dogs for how many years?
Oh, they're 60 years in. Probably.
60 years in. So when he's watching those pups, he's been breeding those dogs. He knows what he wants to see at certain times. He doesn't need them at 3 months old going and running and catching a bear. He sees, look at that. He did that. I've seen that before.
Watching the squirrels with their puppies on a chain.
Yeah.
And the one that's sitting there watching, they're timbering the squirrels and they're watching. Those are dogs that are paying attention.
Yeah. And he sees that in the pups. Now, for you, Heath, you've learned all that through experience, maybe not 60 years worth, but the same thing. It's through experience of dealing. When you're selecting a police dog or now you've transferred it over to hounds, you can look at that and you can think, I can do something with that. They don't have to be fighting Mike Tyson, but you got to see the potential. The potential's there. Now it's up to me to make sure that he's successful.
I think, when you talk about a houndsman, it's being able to take a couple dogs and watch them and pick out I can take that and I can make it, or that dog's already got this, I can make that. I've got 2 pups at the house now that are 8 months old. And my male pup, this is 5 generations on my old dog. He carries himself just like my old dog. His gait in his rear end is just like my old dog.
Genetically inherited traits.
I can see that gait in him.
Yeah.
So, of course, I'm going to take that. He's got something there. Them genetics are lining up somewhere. Now let's put it into the woods.
Yeah.
So it's just, like I said, it's the gait. It's the gait that I see that in my old dog that I see in him.
Pieces. You see little pieces of the puzzle along the way, and those are the ones for me that hold my interest more. They remind you just like I've got, certain dogs that will jump all over at feeding time, and then there's one or two out there, they'll jump on their house and they sit there. They don't touch you. They don't jump on you. Happy as can be to see you. But I'm like, that was Bryn. She would just get on that doghouse and she'd wait patiently for her food. When you were about 3 steps from her, she'd bark. And there's dogs I see now that have that same exact trait. And a litter mate to them will be spinning around your ankles 3 times, tripping you up and flinging mud all over. And I'm like, okay, I like that one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what would you, each of you, I'll start with you, Heath. You get a guy that's fresh, new. He wants to get involved in hounds, bear hunting, cat hunting. What advice would you give them for selecting dogs?
First of all, I would probably tell them, if this is your first time, I would take somebody with you that knows what they're doing.
Thank you.
And I would buy me a started or a dog that has got some experience. Because taking a young dog that knows nothing and you know nothing is hard. And you're probably going to mess up that dog worse or make mistakes, and it may discourage you from even going in the long term. So for me, if I can't mentor you, I'll send you to somebody that can, and we'll get you a dog that's got some potential. And I'll help you and I'll work with you, or however. That's what you should be looking for, because I guarantee you all of us sitting here had somebody that took us under their wing and helped us along the way. And I definitely had that. I've been blessed with the people that's come into my life and who are friends of mine and has taken the time to teach me.
They were patient enough to put up with you.
Yeah.
Me too.
So
absolutely.
Yeah. Try not to buy a puppy. If you don't know anything,
stay away from the internet.
Yeah. Get somebody that knows what they're doing and will take you and help you. And that way, 2 things there. You don't get your butt burnt, because we've all had those.
Yeah.
A couple of my first dogs were bad, and I didn't know no better. Buy a dog that started and running and treeing, because that'll make it more enjoyable for you, and go from there. And as that time goes, you will learn and pick up. And the ones that's going to do it's going to stay, and the ones that's not, 2 or 3 years into it, they're doing something else.
Yeah.
So it kind of works that way.
Mark, what do you think?
Boy, he pretty much nailed it. Don't jump into getting a dog. If it's one thing if you've been around hunting dogs all your life, if you have experience with bird dogs or duck dogs, that's a little different ball game. But to a guy that's never handled a dog and hasn't owned a dog, resist the urge to jump in and get a dog. Go find somebody to hunt with. See if you enjoy it first. Like the good and the bad. You stay out there till midnight or till 1 in the morning on it's pouring rain, and you get that man's dogs. And you'll see, okay, do I like this or do I not like this? And that guy's going to teach you so much. Pay attention to the old people. There's some great young hunters out there. They're harder hunters than me. They're tearing it up. But I've always watched the guys that are in their 60s or 70s or even into their 80s and learn from them. Listen to them. Too many people, he doesn't, he's old now. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Times are different. Pay attention to those guys, and they're going to shorten your learning curve. And then when you finally get a dog, you want something, if you can, that is hunting in the area you're hunting. That's a big one. I'm telling you, I've hunted all over, and dogs perform differently in different places. The terrain, the forestry cover, the amount of water, standing water, running water, roads, distractions around people. There's so many different things. So if you're going to choose a dog, try to find one, hopefully, from your mentor. Maybe he'll give you something. Don't be afraid to take an old dog. Maybe it's a little slower than he wants. He doesn't need it. That's a great dog for a young fella. You're going to go out. You're going to catch some game. You're going to have a dog that listens and that you enjoy. Because you got to enjoy it or you're going to give it up. And you're not going to stick with it. And just resist the internet is a great tool, but it is such an evil place for dogs.
We can all advertise. We can all exploit our own egos too easily
Yeah.
on the internet.
It's awful. You gotta build. Hound hunting to me is about. It's just like this event right here, Plot Days. I don't come down here for the dog events. I come down here for the people.
That's right.
Building a relationship, and you don't build a relationship in 1 month. You build a relationship 10 years, 15 years.
Right.
That's where you're going to learn. So look for those people that are in it for the long term, not the short term. Everybody wants to hunt with their buddies. But, a lot of people, a lot of these young guys, they don't think of longevity and promoting the sport. They're causing problems in places they probably shouldn't be hunting because they don't care. They can't look ahead far enough. Now, we need these young guys, and we want them there, but pay attention to the older guys and learn a few tricks. Roy's a great one. He's out there. I'll tell you what, when the garden's in and there's a new landowner in town, here's some tomatoes. Here's a few things from the garden. I just caught some trout. That man right there is building a relationship. And because of it, he can hunt all over.
Landowners.
With landowners.
Yeah.
With landowners, as well as other hunters. It goes both ways. And the guy that just storms in there and does what he wants and cuts loose on a red-hot strike off of somebody's bird feeder at 4 a.m, it's going to make some bad feelings for people.
And it's going to be bad for
for everybody in this sport.
We were just talking about the deal in Vermont, Heath, about, it's coming. It's nonstop, so we have to take care of it. Getting back to what you said about, finding an older guy. Before I get there, I'll tell you, I talked to my wife this morning. She says, have you seen a lot of nice dogs? Have you found she's worried that I'm going to bring another dog home. But she's sneaky like that. And I told her, I said, I really haven't looked at dogs while I was here. A dog would catch my eye or something while I'm walking down through there. But like you said, Mark, seeing friends and seeing people and talking to people and meeting new people. And, the Browns are here and Joe and Nancy Hudson and Mike Colley's here and, David Williams, just being here. And that's where people get to in this whole thing when you stay in it long enough. If you're not just worried about your own reputation and proving something in the woods, because at the end of the day, it's all about relationships and things like that.
Yeah, take your ego, fold it up, put it in your pocket, come to one of these events, and meet the real legends and learn something from them.
So my answer, I'll put my spin on it. I think a person who is going to get into hounds that thinks they have that desire to do that. I like what both of you said. One of the things I would go a step farther is just find that person. There are plenty of 70-year-old legends here that would welcome you along for the hunt, show up with a dog leash, a pair of boots, and go get dogs. Drag hogs out of the marsh. Mike Colley, we joked around with on that podcast, last one he was in. What do you look for in somebody you want to take hunting? He says draggers.
16 years old and all the drive in the world.
Be that guy. If you show any of these guys any of these men, these houndsmen here, that you're in it for that part of it too, that I'm not just here to turn my dog loose. I'm not just here to stand around and brag about my own dog, that, I'm here to do the work. So if you're new, find those legends, hey, I'm interested in bear hunting. Do you mind if I tag along? And I won't bring a dog. I'm bringing a dog leash and a pair of boots and a strong back and a strong mind, and I'm willing to, those guys will pick you up.
And I'll tell you what, when you stick with them to the end and you look at these larger hunting groups, so-and-so left, they filter off, and there's still 2 or 3 dogs to catch, and then you'll look, and there'll be 2 or 3 guys out of 30 that are still there at the end, and if that kid is still one of those, they'll open their world to you.
You can write your own ticket.
You can get anything you want.
Yep. Well, we're going to talk about scent, and I think we talked about. See, that's
everything but scent.
Yeah. So that's okay. That's okay. The best laid plans sometimes turn into something better, and I think this was something we haven't ever covered on a podcast was selection. You know, how important that selection is.
I still think it's and like I said, I do it. There's things that I see in police dogs that this is what I want. This is what I'm looking for. But I feel like I still struggle in the hound world. I mean, I really do. I mean, you want a dog that finds dope, I can go out and get you one.
Right.
But
why? Why are we? So you don't think? Do you think we can achieve that 8 out of 10?
I sure would like to. I mean, that's my goal. But for me, like I said, I raise 3 or 4 or litter puppies and I pick them out. Well, the thing about police work and hounds that are so different, I need that dog to use his nose to search a vehicle, which I give him the search pattern and to alert. And I'm using his natural instinct to alert. I'm not teaching him to alert. He's doing it on his own. For a hound, that dog's got a trail.
There's a lot of pieces.
He's got to run, not have no quit in him. He's got to catch and stay. And then he's got a tree and stay at the tree. So I'm asking that dog to do 5 different things. And then, we talk about what everybody's preference is, and I'm like Mark, like I don't have a trail dog right now. Like I've started over and whatever. I like to trail, but everybody's definition of a trail dog is a little different. If I go to North Carolina where they run off baits and they say, "Oh, I got a trail dog," they jump him down on a bait. He goes 200 yards and jumps. Well, okay, is that a trail dog? Yeah, man. That bear was here.
Got his bear on his feet.
That bear was 5 hours ago. So for me, I can't run off baits. So I free cast my dogs or rig, and rigging is different than free cast. And I free cast my dogs. I go in the woods. I may walk all day long.
Yep.
And not hit a track. So when I hit a track,
you got to be able to
I want to take
it.
that track, whatever it is. So right now our bear population is good. So yeah, I want a dog that can trail a track up. So for me, I think the police dog stuff's a lot easier. Yeah. Honestly, I do. Yeah. I mean, I can do this series of tests on it, and if it does this stuff on this test, then I got what I'm looking for. For bear hunting or hound hunting or
hound hunting in general, it's the most complex set of traits of any performance animal. It's just like I'm reading about the King Ranch quarter horses, and that's a lot easier thing in a nutshell. I mean, you can pick those 5 traits, but here you go. Now we're back to a hound. We need the speed, we need the brains, we need the nerve. Then we need a dog that can handle well. Then we want a dog that's quiet in the yard, and then it's got a rig. But then I want a close hunting dog because I like to free cast and walk the ridges. I mean, that's a pile of things to look for. Yeah, if you
go to Idaho and you've got a big wide hunting dog that free casts and you don't know where they're at, then you're talking about wolf bait.
Wolf bait. So again, regionally, you have to find the dog that works in your area. If you're in a high bear population, you probably don't want the dog that's going to trail 24-hour-old tracks, honestly. I mean, you're going to spend a lot of time when you could have run 4 or 5 bears, you're still trailing one and haven't even jumped it.
Right.
But then you're in a place where there's not many bears or free. I like to hunt just like you. I like to walk the ridges, years when the beech and the oak is in. Favorite way to hunt. Get away from the roads, the vehicles. You take 6 dogs, they're all loose, and you go and you walk. And that's fun, but you got to take the tracks as they come like that.
Talk about, the difference in police and hounds too. When I'm teaching a new canine team, which is a handler and a dog, in my basic school, I teach it, so my dog does patrol, he does tracking, and he does narcotics. So I've got 3 things there. Well, my dog is stronger in 2 of those things than he is 3. And I think that's the same as hounds. You find a dog that does them all, you've got that special dog. So I got a dog that, okay, he runs good, he's got good speed, he catches good, he trees good, but maybe he don't have the nose quite that I want, but I can't get rid of him because he's got those other qualities that I need. So, and I think when we say pack of dogs, all 5 or 6 of those dogs, or how many ever you're running, each dog has its own place in that pack. If you get 3 or 4 that doing the same thing, then you've got a phenomenal pack. So I don't know. I think
I
it's
coach
harder.
coach lacrosse. I've coached youth lacrosse, and right now I'm coaching high school lacrosse. And I look at it, that pack of hounds is just like the kids. And you got to figure out what that dog or what that kid's strength is, what his weaknesses are, and put him where he can be successful. And everyone's different. And that's the houndsman. You know, put the time in to learn those dogs and learn where they can be successful. And overall, you'll be a much more successful hunter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep. That's valuable. That goes back to the podcast we did on leadership. You know, we did a podcast about leadership, and that's what, whether you're managing people or a pack of hounds, you know, you've got to have some leadership qualities there about, you know, one of the main things that we always taught was don't put your officers in impossible situations. You know, don't set them up for failure is how we said it. Don't set them up for failure. And there's a difference between setting them up for failure to test and setting them up for failure when you expect them to be successful. You know, if you expect success and you take a dog and put him in a situation that he can't be successful, you're setting him up for failure. And, you know, it goes back to the maturity thing. I mean, that's why this is so complex, Heath, because talking about maturity in dogs, there's a certain age where you're not worried about that because they can handle it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they can handle the shortcoming. But sometimes the hunter can't. You know,
It's our egos.
Yeah,
exactly.
Somebody posted this. It may have been you. Somebody posted the biggest burden for a hound's a man's ego.
yeah,
I think
Yeah.
you might have posted
That's
that.
the greatest saying ever.
It is. I mean, you know, sometimes we just got to bite our tongue and go on. And, you know, you was talking about tracks on police work, and we always say this in police work. You're only as good as your last deployment.
Yeah,
Because the next 3 times you go out and don't find a guy, well, they ain't worth a nickel.
that's right.
They can't find nobody. But, you know, it's like I tell them, you're tracking the most sophisticated mammal on this planet. You know, you want to catch bear and coons, I got you. You want to catch people, that's a little bit more difficult task.
Right.
I mean, this mammal, it can think, it can process, it can outthink you. If they know how scent works, and you know they can mess with the dog.
Yeah,
they know how scent works.
Yes,
so,
sir.
you know, it's a lot of difference. And we weren't catching people with our dogs when I first started at Christiansburg, where I'm at now. And about 3 years in, I said, we got to change something. We're not being successful. The guys don't have any faith in us. And then we changed our training, we changed our tactics, and we started catching people. And I had numerous guys come to me and say, I thought dogs weren't worthless. And now, every time something happens, we're the first person they call.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, you've got to be able to be successful. And if you're not successful, you start losing that trust.
Yeah.
Within the police world of it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Anything else, guys? Any final thoughts?
No, it went a different direction than I thought it was going to go, but that's the fun of it.
But we talked about this part of it. You know, genetics.
Absolutely.
I think mainly the thing is I think it's true in Europe, and I think I highly respect European breeders. They've got a whole different set of standards than we do, but at the same time, there is not a silver bullet. You know, it still comes down to screening the dog, finding the right spot for the dog, you know, finding where he can work, things like that. So, you know, it goes back to that old saying, the old timers always say it, you know, you can take the best and the best and you breed them together and it's still a crapshoot of what you're going to get. So part of being that breeder is being able to swallow your pride and saying, that one didn't work, boys, we're going on to the next one.
And if somebody tells you they haven't flopped on their face breeding dogs, then they're lying. I mean, but here's the thing. I've always told people that I have probably learned more from my failures than I have from my successes.
Oh, yeah. Because when you have success, then it's time for your ego to puff up.
Oh, yeah.
And,
Boy,
look what I did, you know, wow. Yeah.
But when you're flat on your face, you know, eating dirt, you're like, oh, gosh.
What do I need? What do I need to
fix?
change?
well, the only way to be successful is fail.
Yes.
Yep.
And, you know, we was talking about breeding. The difference in Americans and Europeans is if they breed a cross and that cross is duds, they're not breeding those dogs again. And that's what happens. We give them to some kids down the road or whatever. Next thing you know, Bobby down the road's like, this is the best dog ever. And he's breeding this dog. And then we end up with another litter worth of it. Just repeats itself. We've got to figure out whether we spay them, neuter them. Last couple dogs that I give away, I spayed and neutered them both.
Right.
Because they were not up to my standards.
Right.
So I took care of that.
Yes.
But now that's something that we, as if we are breeding, have got to be willing to do. We've got to be able to fix where this don't go on.
Yeah, we got to take them out of the gene pool.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because
absolutely.
You can take you take a Hall of Fame dog, pedigree loaded with Hall of Fame dogs. Well, maybe I could breed it and either sell puppies or maybe it'll skip a generation, you know.
I've got a dog right now. I got a Walker Jip at my house right now that is bred out the wazoo. And she's 9 months old and she's not going to cut it. And I mean, her pedigree is stacked. And I'm so disappointed that I have this genetic dog here that has got dogs in it that I want, but I can't use it.
Right.
I can't do it. So
for me, not, and this is different for everybody, but for me personally, I have found that if I don't sell pups, I make the honest choices. It's a lot easier. If you've got, $1,000 invested into an 8-week-old pup by the time you get it here and buying it, boy, you feel like you got to get something for your return. But, if this pup was given to you by somebody, I feel, the investment isn't there. You make better choices. And culling is, it can mean as simple as you said. It's removed from the breeding population, and that can be spayed and neutered. But the culling program is super important. And people in general have gotten softer, and that's where the Europeans, I think, excel, as their culling programs are ruthless.
They are.
And that is the difference, in my personal opinion, that a lot of people here in the States, we've turned these dogs into human traits. We've applied these human traits to them, the Bambi syndrome.
Anthropomorphism.
There you go. And they just can't make the hard choice of...
my dog's sad. My dog...
Yep.
My dog this. My dog...
It's a performance animal, and at the end of the day, we have to hold that animal accountable. Did it meet our standards for performance? And if it didn't, then it should be removed and not used. And if it did, then we move forward with it.
No excuses, no ego involved. It's just not cutting it.
That's what I say at the house, because I have a bunch of girls that love dogs, and I use Clay Newcomb's thing. They're utilitarian.
Yes.
They work or they don't stay here.
Right.
It's one of the two. It's their option.
I'm good at my house with that, as long as it's my hunting, my hounds. Now, Roxy, the wonder dog, and now Axel, the pit bull, my bulldog. When your kids get older and they leave, it's kind of fun to mess with the dogs and talk to them like kids.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And my wife really gets into it.
Yeah.
But the thing is, we have got to give those dogs opportunity.
Yeah. Opportunities.
We've got to give them opportunity to succeed.
Yeah.
Leadership.
Yeah.
We got to give them opportunity to succeed. And if they have that opportunity, then they don't succeed, then there's where we need to figure out what.
You're the leader at that point, and you've got to make the right decision.
Yeah.
For me personally, with those pups, I try to give them to people that I think are going to give them the fair shake, that are going to put them in the woods. They don't always have to be the best hunter, but they're going to give them opportunity.
Yeah.
And I kind of place them, and some people probably get upset and they get their noses out of joint about it, but it's because I want to better the breed. I don't want to just make more dogs. And I certainly only make a cross when I feel I should really get something out of that dog because it's an exceptional dog.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just making a cross. I'm not selling puppies. I'm not looking to repopulate the world with plot dogs. I want to make a cross because I want to see. I think that could be the next one.
Well, your Facebook account's going to blow up now with people asking for dogs and telling you that they'll give it a chance. And,
oh yeah,
yeah.
Yeah,
so,
but we breed. I mean, that's the same with me. The only reason I breed is when I need another dog.
When I need another dog.
When I need another dog. And I'm like you. I'm not selling them. They go to the guys in my hunting group.
And you can hunt with the dog. And this is how I've sort of built the program I want to follow, like the Europeans, I've placed those dogs, and a lot of them I've tried to place close enough that I can go and hunt with them because everybody's standards are different.
You want to be able to evaluate.
I want to evaluate.
Yeah, you
the
don't
dog.
need. You don't.
Yep.
Some starry-eyed
Yep.
kid's got a dog that's opening on a track and treeing
Yep.
with other dogs. You need to be able to evaluate what you're doing.
And that makes a huge difference because then you can move forward, I think, with the best dog in the litter and make that best choice breeding-wise. Whereas if you're selling them, you're never going to see them again, or they're across the world. That dog's dead to you as a breeder.
Yeah.
You're not going to spend, if it's out in California, you're not going to spend the money to get it. But if you place them close and with friends, and it could even be down here. I'm in Maine. There's some down here in Tennessee. I'll come down here just to hunt with a dog, just to see. But that helps a lot in your selection process, I think, and is really important.
Oh, we could probably turn this into a 3-hour conversation. It's what happens when you get guys together that have a lot of input and things like that. But
been fun. This is I guess we took some angles I didn't really think we were, but I've enjoyed
that's
it.
okay.
I
I
really
host
have.
this thing, and it took some angles I didn't think it would. So
Sorry.
I had this clear plan
No,
when I
I-
came in.
It's great because I think you, Heath, you really brought a different element to it. And it always fascinates me, these working animals from different aspects, to draw the parallels and see there's a lot of things we can use. So what if a guy's a bird dog guy or a bite dog, police dog, drug, whatever, horses. I mean, there's so many things that are parallels to the breeding process and selection.
One of the guys, I'll wrap this up here, but I had a dog breeder tell me one time, if you really want to understand genetics and how to breed, he said, find somebody that raises pigeons, rolling pigeons, rollers. He said those guys that are students at that have figured out, genetic markers and how to cross, and they can do it in a much
Faster.
much faster and more condensed time frame than we can as houndsmen. But there's something to learn there. So that's backing up what you said, Mark. The parallels. We got to look at all of it. If you're a student and you want to figure this out, you can't just look in the hound world. You got to look at why, you see 6-week-old German short hairs that instinctively, when they walk up to a wing, they lock up on point. You got to figure out why the pigeon rolls or whatever. There's a lot of parallels in this world, and we can't get tunnel vision on our little piece of it. There's a lot more information out there for us to glean.
If you want to be good at what you do, you've always got to be learning.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to study. You got to be a student. And I've been training police dogs since '03, so almost 20 years, 17 years. I've been running hounds since '94, and I still every day I learn something. I pick up something. I find a new training method. I find a new way to do things. So you got to be learned. You've got to be able to open up and learn. You got to. If you want to be really good at what you do, you need to learn.
Yep.
And not just be like that one track.
Yeah.
And
tunnel vision.
Yeah, and I mean you can't. I've been there.
we all
my
have.
first 10, 15 years of it.
Well, we know houndsmen too, guys that are still, they've done it the same way for 30 years, and they thought they had it all figured out, and they're still behind the 8 ball.
Yeah.
They're still trying to figure things out. The only thing they've been doing is chasing dogs through the woods for 30 years. And sometimes I'm that guy, and
we all go through it.
Yeah.
That's right.
But when you look around and you try to learn the different aspects of it, it kind of gives you a inner peace that I don't have to be successful every time.
You don't have to be. You can find I find my satisfaction. Sometimes I don't even jump the bear, but I watch that dog trail for 15 miles. It's 20 below zero. Been through 3 rivers, been through the ledges. The snow conditions have changed 6 times. That's a win for me.
Yeah.
I never even got a cat race, but boy, that was fun.
Yeah.
So
It's a long-term goal. It shouldn't be a short-term.
Right.
It should be a long-term.
Well, I think one thing that's contributed to that, and God bless competition coon hunters, but when you look at the way that system's set up with baby stakes and super stakes, and you know, you got the pup earnings and different things, we've tried to speed that up. And without the competition coon hunters out there, we wouldn't have a whole lot of houndsmen left in the United States, you know, and thank goodness there's that out there, and our hound breeding would be a lot lower. But, you know, being a student of it and watching it, I've seen the expectations of our hounds. People don't know patience if all you've ever done is competition coon hunt, because by 6 months old, you need
got to be doing some stuff.
So,
we haven't even put them in the woods yet.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And they think we're all crazy. You know, why would I feed a dog for 2 years that I haven't won anything with yet?
Right.
Or haven't hunted yet. So, guys, we better wrap this one up.
Yeah.
Man, I appreciate your time. Heath, I'm
Absolutely. Yeah.
you were like spur of the moment. No prep time or anything. Just jump in.
This guy killed it. It put us to shame. And he was just
well,
the
he
last
put
second.
you to shame.
No.
I just shut up. This was the easiest job hosting I've ever had, because I've got two good houndsmen here that are students of the game, and I just kind of shut up and sat back and let you guys go back and forth. That's great.
Well, next time we'll do the one on scent.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll still get back to the scent here
bet.
sometime.
You
Because
bet.
that is, like you said before, it's the question we get all the time is how scent works. And, you know, I get that in my tracking dogs. You know, our tracking dogs, we're not tracking down 6-hour-old tracks. It's a completely different ballgame than the hounds.
Yeah.
And the biggest part of that is contamination. You know,
You've got a better network than I ever had. It was whenever I'd get called to it,
2 days later.
You get the call at 2 o'clock in the morning, and it's like, well, when did he run from the scene?
8 o'clock in the morning.
We've been out there looking for him all day. Had every volunteer fireman out there, and we've been looking for this lost person all day. I wish you would have called me 16 hours ago.
Yeah, and that's what the difference in successes are with you know, the hounds in the police world is contamination is a killer.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, when I teach the classes, you know, we teach a tactical tracking class with the canines, and, you know, once you get those guys out there and show them, they're like, oh, yeah, I probably messed up your stuff a bunch of times. Yeah, you have.
Yeah.
You know, dog trying to work through contamination is a lot different than bear track crossing the road or something that we're able to put them on. So
scent discrimination's a whole chapter of a podcast for us, Heath.
it is.
It's awesome stuff. I mean, when I cat hunt, just what I've learned, I try to stay 3 to 4 feet beside the track and never walk on the track.
My guys squall at me because if we're doing a track in the snow
Yep.
and they're walking it, I tell them, stay off the track.
Stay off the track.
off the track.
Yeah.
And then they go into a feed plot, and there's circles and circles and circles, and I'm like, yep, now find the end of that track.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, guys, we're going to wrap it up. And until we get together next time, hopefully sooner than later,
Definitely.
you follow your hounds and I'll follow mine.
All